All right, this is just going to be your introduction to lesson 5.1 to chapter 5. And chapter 5 is all about systems of equations. And a system is just when you have more than one equation at once. So we're going to be dealing with two or more equations at a time in this chapter. This first lesson is about graphing. And this exploration is on page 235 if you want to look at your book. You should be following along in your spiral on these explorations. So let's go ahead and jump in. Exploration 1. Your family opens a bed and breakfast. They spend $600 preparing a bedroom to rent. The cost to your family for food and utilities is $15 per night. They charge $75 per night to rent the bedroom. So there's a lot of information there. If you want to jot down the highlighted stuff, go for it. Part A says write an equation that represents the cost. I know that this kind of structure was a little confusing for people when we did 3.4, so I'm going to walk you through it. They're basically defining your variables for you here, the way that they wrote it. So we can write this as let C equal cost in dollars and let X equal number of nights. So that's what they've kind of done here for us in this little sentence. And we can take these different parts and write them into just a regular equation. So C is our cost in dollars, and it equals $15 per night. Remember, we've talked about when you have per, that's going to be kind of your rate or your slope. So that's 15. And then they have this multiplication dot. So 15 times the number of nights that someone stays at their bed and breakfast, plus the $600 it costs them to get the room set up ready to rent. So this represents their total cost of kind of running their little bed and breakfast. Now we move into B, which is going to talk about the revenue. Revenue is like income. So A is talking about how much it's costing them to run it, and B is talking about basically their income, how much they're getting for everything. And in here we have a new variable. You can see they have let R equal revenue in dollars. So again, they've kind of structured this for you already. So we have this equation R equals, and then again, that was $75 per night. So that's going to be multiplied by the number of nights. And notice that the number of nights hasn't changed. Okay, so that's the same thing in each of these problems. So we've got our two equations there. And now part C says a set of two or more linear equations is called a system of linear equations. That's what I was getting at earlier. Write a system of linear equations for this. That just means put these two things together. That's it. So we're going to say C equals 15x plus 600 and R equals 75x. All right, now exploration 2 is going to build on this concept. Use the cost and revenue equations, and I'll write them again down here to make them easier for us to see as I scroll down the page. To determine how many nights your family needs to rent the bedroom before recovering the cost of preparing the bedroom. This is the break-even point. So what we're going to be trying to find here is what number of nights are they going to break even, meaning that the cost and their revenue is the same. So we're going to be looking for a place where like this number would be the same, for example. So you might want to get your calculator out to help you with some of these calculations, but our cost in dollars for 0 nights to run it is going to be 600. And then it's additional $15 per night. So 615. And just keep adding 15 at a time. Okay, and then revenue is they're getting $75 per night. So if someone doesn't stay there at all for 0 nights, it's going to bring in $0. So we're going to start at 75 here. Okay, so notice here that at 10 days, it's going to cost them $750 to run the bed and breakfast, and at 10 days, they will have um, earned the amount of $750. So part B down here says, how many nights does your family need to rent the bedroom before breaking even? So that would be 10 nights. In the same coordinate plane, graph the cost equation and the revenue equation. Okay, so I wrote those equations there again. I'm actually going to write or graph these different equations in different colors so that we can tell them apart a little bit better. There we go. Um, so let's go ahead and graph our revenue one first. That might be a little bit easier. So again, at 0 nights, it's going to get them $0. And at 1, we had 75. You can look at your table. I have to zoom out quite a bit to do that, so I'm not going to. But $75 is per night. And you'll notice that this scale went by 75 also. And then that kind of checks because at 10 nights, it is hitting at $750, which is what we just found. Okay, so that's my revenue. And then we can go ahead and do at $600. Now, this is a little bit harder to graph. So we know that, I'm going to scroll up to my table. Let's look for an even kind of number. 675 was at 5 nights. 720, this is going to be harder. So we could just kind of go to that 750 point to try to have them match up because of the way the scale is on that graph. You can eyeball some of those ordered pairs, but for the sake of time on this video, I'm going to kind of go with the faster route. So you'll notice here on these graphs, if we look back, we said 5 nights was 675. So I can show you that that point is right there on my line. So that adds a little bit more detail to it. So you'll notice the point where they broke even is where those two lines cross. So that ordered pair on the graph would be 10 nights, and that was $750. So that's the ordered pair where they cross. Find the point of intersection of the two graphs. What does this point represent? Okay, so I just said that. I was a little jumping the gun there. That's 10 nights and $750. And they're all interconnected. The table and the graph and the rules, they all represent the same thing. So here, how can you solve a system of linear equations? How can you check your solution? This is kind of up to you. I want you to think about all the different ways that we just did this. We did a table, we had rules, we had a graph, and where did you find that solution? The solution was where those two met. We also didn't really talk about how you can check. We're going to discuss this more in class tomorrow. Lastly, what I want you to spend some time doing on your own is working on number 4 in your spiral. Solve each system by using a table or sketching a graph. You might want to graph some of them more than others. Personally, when I look at that, I don't really want to graph that. So I would probably make a table. And I'll give you a hint on this one. You need to go into the negatives a little bit to try and figure out where they're going to cross. So I would go in your table, I would go from like -3 to 3. There's a hint there for your x values. And then here you could easily graph or make a table, so that's up to you. And I'll give you another hint that this one is going to be going to meet at a negative x value also. So if I were you, I would probably graph this one. That's a personal choice. I would probably use a table for this one. I would do either for this one. That's kind of a hint. So your task is to try to solve that system, figure out where those two equations, those two lines, are going to have the same x and y value. And you can decide which one's going to be easier for that route. And then we'll talk more about that in class tomorrow.